I'm attracted to my father-in-law and I kind of want to hook up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I met a little over a year ago. We actually met on vacation and we happened to live in the same city, so we decided to go on a date when we got back. 2 months later, we got engaged. My family was completely against it though. My parents thought it was way too quick for us to get married. But here's the thing, I'm 32 and I was desperate at that point for somebody to just ask me to marry them. And looking back, that was completely wrong of me. My parents were so against it that when they met my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, they told him that we should just date a little bit longer before we even decided to get engaged. But of course, eventually we made the decision on our own and my parents just had to deal with it. By the time we had gotten engaged, I had only met his mom. His dad traveled a lot for work, so he was pretty much never home. So here's a little backstory on my husband. He was born in the same city I was, and his parents had him when they were 14 and 15. They were incredibly young. So his parents were more like his friends. They had so much fun and hung out together. It was always a really good time. We decided to have an engagement party, and that's when I met his dad. And it was infatuation at first sight. Part 2 is up. I'm attracted to my father-in-law and I kind of want to hook up with him. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. I decided to start flirting with him a little bit more. I kind of wanted to see what he would say. My parents-in-law invited me and my husband over to their house for barbecue. So I decided to wear a thong bikini. My father-in-law was grilling in the backyard and my mother-in-law was inside making a salad. So of course, I took off all my clothes and I pranced around the pool in my thong bikini. I positioned myself perfectly so that my father-in-law had a great view of my ass. I also went up to him and started talking. I would touch his shoulder every now and then. That's when he said, if I didn't know any better, I would think that you're flirting with me. Then he smiled. I almost died. I laughed with him too, and then my stupid husband came outside. That was 2 days ago. You guys tell me, but in my opinion, it sounded like he was liking it. For the rest of the barbecue, every time I would turn to look at him, he was always looking at me, so I knew it was working. But now I'm like, what's the goal? Do I really want to ruin my relationship with my husband and ruin his parents' relationship? Or do you think we can keep it on the down low? What should I do? Story time about how I caught my boyfriend and my best friend talking trash about me. My boyfriend swears that this was the first time they ever spoke badly about me behind my back, so I need you guys to tell me your opinion. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 years, but it's been on and off for a very long time. He's always been a little bit toxic and extremely jealous. Jealous to the point where I can't have any guy friends. He has to know exactly where I'm going and with who, and he always likes to approve the content I'm about to post on Instagram. One time I actually posted a bikini picture of me and my best friend, and he flipped out. He said all I was doing was trying to get attention from guys, and of course he called me a slut too. After this, I broke up with him and we didn't see each other for like 3 months. But apparently he called my best friend and asked her to convince me to get back with him. And she succeeded. I got back with him. But it seems like my boyfriend just kept getting even more jealous of everything. He even got jealous of my new boss. My boss happens to be young and very attractive, and my boyfriend forced me to quit. You heard that right. I quit my job. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how I caught my boyfriend and my best friend talking trash about me behind my back. He swears this never happened before, but I don't know. You guys have to tell me what you think. After he forced me to quit my job because he thought I was attracted to my boss, I held a lot of resentment. So I went and talked to my best friend. Cause duh, isn't that what you usually do when you have a problem? I went straight to her house and I cried to her. She told me that I was stupid for even leaving my job, and basically that I needed to break up with my boyfriend. Then I got really mad at her. She convinced me to get back with him. I ended up leaving her place because I was so upset. I went to my parents and told them everything that happened. My dad was so upset, he called my boyfriend and told him to never ever look for me again, and that he was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. My mom even called him the devil. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I caught my boyfriend and my best friend talking trash behind my back. After my dad yelled at my boyfriend on the phone telling him to stay away from me, my boyfriend started calling my phone non-stop. At this point, you can imagine I was super upset. My boyfriend forced me to quit my job, which I did. My best friend wasn't listening to me, and my parents were just attacking my boyfriend. So I decided to go back to my best friend's house. I pull up to her apartment building and park. I walked all the way up to her apartment, but as I got closer to the door, I could hear my boyfriend and her speaking. I immediately thought that my boyfriend was there looking for me, but something told me to stop and listen at the door. That's when I hear my best friend calling me a stupid bitch, that I don't appreciate my boyfriend, and that even though I'm a brat, I still get everything I want. Then my boyfriend says, "You should have heard her fat ass dad. I should beat the crap out of him for his disrespect." I walked in and told him I heard everything. My best friend immediately apologized and backtracked. She said she was just trying to calm my boyfriend down, who was being aggressive. My boyfriend also apologized. I told him I couldn't trust them. They swore that that was the first time they'd ever done that. My best friend keeps calling me, but I won't answer her calls. Should I break up with my boyfriend? Is it normal that my boyfriend threatened to unalive me and himself if I try to leave him? Disclaimers are not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 6 years. He's always been very judgmental of everything I do. The clothes I wear, if I wear makeup, if I don't wear makeup, if I'm friendly, if I'm too friendly. He just finds a way to make everything I do bad. He's always been very controlling and very jealous too. But in the past 3 years, things have gotten even worse. Exactly 3 years ago, he asked me to marry him and I told him that I just didn't think we were ready. So basically, I said no. He took this as me saying that I didn't want to be with him, that I didn't love him, and that he wasn't good enough for me. Obviously, I don't think any of those things, but I said no because our relationship was not in a good place. I was always constantly scared of him and worried that he would get mad at me. I knew then that that was not a good situation to get married into. I can't imagine how much worse he would be if we actually got married and he felt like he owned me. After the proposal, he became more insecure and wanted to keep tabs on me all the time. Even if I'm going to my parents' house, he still calls me and checks on me if I'm still there. He's even called my mom to ask her where I am. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how I caught my dad watching me change. I think he's trying to gaslight me. I need help. Disclaimers and now my storytime was sent me on Instagram. That's when my dad started acting all jealous when he saw my boyfriend. He took my mom into another room and said that I shouldn't have a boyfriend and that I was too young and that he would take advantage of me. But my mom stood her ground. She asked him politely to leave and he did. The following Saturday, my dad comes over to visit again. This time I was in my room changing. My mom told him that I was in my room changing, but she went to the kitchen. Obviously, this is when my dad comes upstairs. The door was slightly open and he could see inside. I was finishing putting on a t-shirt and when I turn around, there he is looking. I screamed and told him that he scared me and I told him, why are you watching me change? He said, you're crazy, I wasn't doing that. I said, yes you were, I just saw you. I was so weirded out. After he left, I asked my mom why she never leaves me alone with him. That's when she told me that he was accused of S-ing an underage girl. So I told my mom what happened. That's when she said he's never coming back to this house again. Now my dad is gaslighting both me and my mom. He even called me a liar and that I'm making it up. But my mom of course believes me. What should we do? Storytime about how I caught my dad watching me while I changed. I think he's trying to gaslight me. I need help. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. It's sent me on Instagram. I'm 17 years old, about to turn 18. My parents got a divorce when I was 13. My mom caught him cheating on her over several times. And one of the times, he even did it at home with some girl he met at a bar. Because of that, my mom told me not to ever trust him. But the way she would say things made me think that there was something else behind everything. After the divorce, my mom got full custody, thank God. This is when my mom told me that I needed to stay away from him. She told me that if I ever found myself alone with him, that I should just call her and tell her to pick me up. When I was 13, I never thought about it twice. After the divorce, my dad started dating a 19-year-old girl. Mind you, he was 46 at the time. When my mom found out, I remember she called him. She told him he was disgusting for dating someone that was 19. But my dad laughed on the phone and hung up on her. My mom didn't even know that I heard the conversation, but she had it on speaker, so I did. He did have rights to visitation though. So he would come over every Saturday and Sunday to visit me, but my mom never left us alone. But my dad has been giving me such weird vibes lately. When I bring it up to him, he says I'm hallucinating and imagining things. Part 2 is up. Is it normal that my boyfriend threatened to unalive me and then himself if I ever left him? Disclaimers, not my story time was sent me on Instagram. After I ran away to my parents' house, he sent me a message saying that he would give me some time. I thought this was a good sign. Maybe he was starting to understand what I needed. I stayed at my parents' house for a week, and that's when I started noticing that he was driving around my neighborhood. If I went to the supermarket, he was there. Eventually, I called him and we made up. He did try to work on his jealousy, which made a huge improvement in our relationship. The only problem is that anytime we would ever get into a fight and I would say that I needed space, he would come back to the same thing. Always say, I will unalive you and then me. He knows that by saying that I'm gonna instantly stop the fight, but I'm starting to think that he's not gonna do it. And I heard from a guy friend that his girlfriend says the same thing to him, so I'm just wondering if it's just him being dramatic. Because at this point, I'm only with him because of that. I feel bad for him. Part of me is still very attracted to him, but I know that he's just gonna continue getting worse. Is this normal or not? What should I do? Storytime about how my Bumble date tried to choke me. I mean, he was literally trying to kill me. Disclaimers, not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. This was by far the worst date I've ever been on. Let me just say, I've had really bad dates. A little backstory. It all started last year when I left my broke-ass boyfriend. He would expect me to pay for everything because I was earning more money than him. So literally from one day to the next, I kicked him out of my apartment and I had all this newfound freedom. Now here's the thing. My friends all use dating apps and they never had such bad experiences, so I figured I should try it out too. To tell you that one of my best friends got married to one of her Bumble dates, I had high hopes. I downloaded Bumble the day after I broke up with my boyfriend. It was probably too soon, but honestly, I was just trying to have fun. My first date was okay. I wasn't necessarily attracted to this guy, but he was very successful and very funny. And when a guy can make me laugh, that goes a long way. So it kind of tricked me into believing that he was like, okay. So I decided to go on another date with him. Only the second time, all he kept talking about was Trump. So I got up from the table and I left him there. I mean, that's one thing about me. If I don't like you, I will straight up leave the table. I mean, I'm not wasting my precious time on some guy. Part 2 is Story time about how my Bumble date tried to choke me. This man was trying to kill me. Disclaimer is not my story time was sending me on Instagram. After the first date, I decided to give it another chance. I ended up going on a date with a guy who I'm pretty sure was gay. The whole time we talked about his best friend and how great his best friend was, and he definitely sounded different. So by the end of the date, I asked him if he was bi. He acted all offended and said no. So obviously, I never went on a date with him again. When I got home that night, I decided to get back on the app and look for another date. As you do. And that's when I saw the guy. The one who choked me. Let me start by saying he was definitely the most attractive guy I had seen on the app until that point. Which was one of the reasons why I really wanted to go on a date with this guy. Up until that point, all these other guys were like 5s. He was definitely a 10. We connected right away and he asked me out on a date that very weekend. And I said yes. I was so excited to actually meet this one specific guy because he was so attractive. I went all out and went to get waxed. I got my hair done. The weekend comes around and we end up meeting at a bar. We met, sparks flew, it was amazing. But after 3 drinks, he started getting very aggressive. He started grabbing my butt and everything else. If you know what I mean. Part 3 is story time about how my husband's trying to get me to become an escort. That's when he confessed that he had already signed me up to several escort websites and that he had been having conversations with different men pretending to be me. Then he pulls out his phone and shows me all the conversations. Most of the men were trying to make me their sugar babies and were offering me upwards of $5,000 a month just to go on dates with them. The look in my husband's face was of excitement and happiness. I was mortified. I couldn't believe that my husband was even entertaining the idea. After he finishes showing me all of the messages between him and these other men, he tells me that we could be earning about $22,000 a month. And all I'd have to do is just go on dates with these guys. I started to cry and he told me that I was overreacting and that most women would kill to be in my place. I told him these men would expect much more than just going on dates. And he swears up and down that they won't. Now the thing is, we have had money trouble, so I see where he's coming from, but I just don't know. He's still trying to convince me and he shows me messages from these guys every single day. Most of these men are in their 50s and one of these guys was actually really attractive. The money sounds so good, but I don't know what to do. I feel like I would resent my husband eventually. I mean, what if I fall in love with one of them? What should I do?